So you should watch it.
Yeah, we'll watch that video. I want us to talk about a couple other things first.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah, baby. Yeah.
Where do you find those things?
Internet. Get anything on the internet. Okay, so let's just kind of, whoa, what's going on here? Let's kind of review some of these parts we've talked about. Do you know what the part in the middle is called?
Nucleus.
That's the nucleus, okay? And then what's in the nucleus?
Nucleolus.
Well, the nucleolus is in there too, yeah. But that's where the nucleic acid is. It's in the nucleus. The DNA and the RNA. It's called nucleic acid. It's what holds the information. There's also some proteins in there. Now the nucleolus, this part here, is what actually helps make the ribosomes. These little yellow things are the ribosomes. And what do the ribosomes do?
Make proteins.
They make proteins. They make proteins. The proteins are then packaged into this part. What's this whole gloopy part called? Endoplasmic reticulum.
Just smooth and rough.
And then little bubbles of endoplasmic reticulum carrying vesicles, carrying the material, goes to the Golgi apparatus, goes through the Golgi apparatus, is changed by enzymes in the Golgi apparatus into some final form, and often is excreted from the cell, but sometimes stays in the cell, and it might act as a lysosome or something like that. Do you remember what a lysosome is?
It's a destroyer.
Kills the bad stuff.
Yeah, it'll digest. It's a container of digestive enzymes. I like to call it a floating ball of death that tears up any particles that need to be digested by the cell.
What do you call peroxisomes?
I don't call them anything. But peroxisomes break down hydrogen peroxide, which is a waste product that's made during normal cell metabolism, and it needs to be broken down. So there's also bubbles called peroxisomes. There's one right there that kind of tears up hydrogen peroxide. Have you ever heard of that stuff, hydrogen peroxide? It's a poison that's produced in cells and needs to be torn up, and that's done in the peroxisome.
Why does it create hydrogen peroxide? Why does it create a poison that I can kill?
Is that the contact solution?
It tears up hydrogen peroxide.
No.
Why would the cell produce something that can
No,
kill
it's like the
it?
stuff that when you get cut, you understand it on
It gets all the dirt out, yes.
Why does it bubble?
The hydrogen peroxide, listen to me. Normally, if you're breaking down molecules like fats and proteins, if you're breaking them down, you'll produce hydrogen peroxide because of that, which is just H2O, water, with an extra hydrogen. An extra oxygen. So if that forms H2O2, which happens to be a very, very poisonous substance, and then that has to be immediately dealt with after it's produced. It has to be broken down, and the peroxisome does that. The reason why you put hydrogen peroxide on a cut is because it'll kill any cells that get in your cut, any bacteria inside, because like I said, it's a poison. You're putting poison onto your cut to kill any cells that happen to get in it, so you don't get an infection. Yeah, it'll kill your own cells too, but in the process, hopefully you'll kill all the bad cells, and your own cells can reform, can multiply. Your other cells that aren't killed can multiply and heal up the wound. You just don't want to get anything bad from the outside in there. Yes?
Sometime my mom had a splinter in her foot, and she had been putting hydrogen peroxide on it, where she took it out, and she sat on her bedside table next to her water bottle, and in the middle of the night she woke up and she took 3 huge gulps of hydrogen peroxide on accident, and then she woke my dad up and was like, "No, don't do," and she had to go back to sleep, and the next morning for 6 hours she had her insides were burning.
You can gargle it, but you're not supposed to swallow it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kills germs in your mouth.
But she picked it up because she thought it was her water bottle.
Brutal. Could she not taste it different?
I think after 2 days
Yeah.
she finally realized.
I'm not
She was down in the sleep. Okay, so what we need to? There's other stuff in here that we also need to talk about. So let me go forward here.
It tasted awful.
This shows, listen, stop talking. This shows the inside of a peroxisome. And like I said, peroxisomes help deal with poisons inside of a cell. If you look at a plant cell, this is showing a plant cell up here. You probably noticed this huge vacuole here. This is called a vacuole. A vacuole is a very large container that holds water. And plant cells need a lot of water because they use water to help make food for themselves. And we learned that whole process. It's called photosynthesis. Have you ever heard of that process, photosynthesis? That's how plants eat. Plants don't run around eating things. They aren't grabbing things and eating them. Plants, sun shines on them, and water comes up through their roots, and they use the water to make food. So they have a big container of water inside their cell to help do that. The water also helps support the cell. To kind of gives it pressure inside it that pushes out on its cell walls and keeps the cell rigid. So that big, it's called a vacuole. Anytime you see a very large vesicle, it's called a vacuole. Vacuole is just really large.
Only found in plants.
Yeah, the big vacuoles are only found in plants. And there are protists that have vacuoles too, but they aren't really found in animal cells. Now, another thing that you'll find in plants that you don't find in animals are chloroplasts. These green organelles here, they're called chloroplasts. And remember, those used to be free-living bacteria, free-living prokaryotes on their own that were taken into the cells and then utilized. And now they're found only in cells. But these things right here, they're what makes food for the plant cell. It takes water and sunlight and carbon dioxide and makes it into food. And we spend an entire chapter, chapter 7, learning how it does that. It's called photosynthesis. Isn't that great? All these parts of the chloroplast here that it's listing here, you don't have to know those yet. We'll know those in a later chapter.
So the chloroplasts just make food?
Chloroplasts make food for the plant cell. One plant cell might have 50 or 100 chloroplasts in it. This is just showing a few. We'll look at some plant cells under the microscope. You can see the little chloroplasts. They're real cool. By the way, the chloroplasts are the only thing that's green in a plant. The chloroplast. Nothing else in a plant is green. When they show this picture of the plant cell, they color the cell wall green, but it's not really. And they color the vacuole there green, but it's not. Only the chloroplasts are actually green. And it's really only the little thylakoid membranes, which are right here. This is really the only green part. This part isn't really green. I don't know why they colored it that way. If I had written the textbook, I wouldn't have colored it that way. But I can't do everything. Let's see, maybe this one shows some chloroplasts in the cell. Yeah. Here's some plant cells.
This real-time movie shows that the cytoplasm in these LODA cells is streaming vigorously. Watch the chloroplasts as a guide to what the cytoplasm is up to.
You can actually see that with the microscope, and I'm going to get some Elodia. And I'll let you look at it. I'll let you look at this under the microscope. It's pretty cool.
But they move.
Yeah, they're moving. What's that?
So they move. It's just
Yeah, they move around. Yeah, all the contents of the cell move. Nothing's really still inside the cell. Isn't that cool? It's fun to play with.
Were you going to show us that video that you...
Yeah, I'm going to show it to you. Some of these videos aren't any good. I need to get rid of them. Here's the powerhouse of the cell. It's called the mitochondrion. And it also was once a free-living organism, but it's now been taken into cells, and it lives inside cells.
What kind of cells, like plant and animal?
Say what?
Plants and animals?
Yes, plants and animals both have mitochondrions. Every cell has mitochondrions. That's almost every cell. Not all cells. Very simple cells. Prokaryotes don't have them. But this is a prokaryote, and it's been taken into eukaryotic cells. But anyway, what this thing does is it takes food and oxygen and tears it apart. It tears apart the food you eat and adds some oxygen to it. And that's how the cell gets energy. It breaks down your food is what this mitochondrion does. And so it's real interesting. It's a real important organelle. It's the reason why you eat and why you breathe. There's only one reason why you eat and why you breathe. It's so that the oxygen and the food will go into this thing, and this thing tears apart the food molecules and gets the energy that's stored in the food molecules and provides it for the cell to use. So the reason why you eat and why you breathe is to let these mitochondria do their thing.
Isn't that just ATP?
Yes, they make ATP, if you've ever heard of that before. ATP is the energy molecule. These break down the food molecules and give the energy to little carriers called ATP. And ATPs go everywhere in the cell and can be used as an energy source. We spent all of chapter 8 learning about this. So chapter 7 is about that, and chapter 8 is about this.
Are peroxisomes in plant and animal cells?
Whew. No, I think they're just in animals.
Okay.
Wait, what are just animal cells?
Peroxisomes?
Alright.
I don't know.
They're in both.
Does it say they're in both? Yeah, you're right. Plant cells also have peroxisomes. They oxidize fatty acids into molecules that can be converted into sugars needed by the growing plant. Hey, check this out. It says the 1992 film Lorenzo's Oil is based on a medical case of a boy with defective peroxisomes. Guess what? I've got Lorenzo's Oil. And somebody has rented it. Who's got Lorenzo's Oil? They didn't write. I know I have it. Did anyone in here check out Lorenzo's Oil?
bad.
Somebody got it and then didn't write down their name. Well, we got Lorenzo's Oil. Somebody's got it.
That's why they call it oil. Is that not related?
It was Lorenzo's dad. Lorenzo was the little boy with the problem, and his dad came up with something that an oil that he could take to help
Is that a recent movie?
heal him. 1992.
Pretty recent.
Okay, now we want to talk about the cytoskeleton. The cytoskeleton is a very cool thing. Let me go back, way back. Here we go. when we're looking at the cell here, do you see all these little lines running all through the cell? All these little lines are everywhere.
Microtubules.
All these things. Those are microtubules and microfilaments and intermediate filaments and actin filaments. These are all part of the cytoskeleton. The cytoskeleton is a network of proteins, different shaped proteins. Sometimes they're shaped like a tube, so they're called microtubules. Sometimes they're shaped like a thin wire, they're called microfilaments. And they go all over the cell. And one of their main functions is to act as a road, a transport network. You see, when these vesicles are moving from one place to another in a cell, they're usually attached to a microfilament. Emery, hang with me. Well, you weren't looking up here.
Oh, okay.
You're staring at the floor. So if these vesicles are to move, they actually have to attach to a microfilament and slide along the microfilament. It's like a wire, a rope. And they actually kind of do this. They grab it, they have little arms and legs, they're called motor molecules, that pull along the rope and pull these big vesicles along. And that takes energy, of course. It gets the energy from the mitochondrions here, provide energy for these bubbles to move. And so that's one of the most important things about this cytoskeletal network. It allows things to move around in the cell along the network. It also provides structure for a cell. It can allow the cell to take a certain shape and be tough and hard to smash because it's got these fibers running all the way through it that are tough. So it's kind of like the metal rods that go inside concrete, that kind of hold the shape of it. Rebar, what's it called?
Yeah,
rebar. So I get back here. So here we go. Here's a vesicle, and here's the little motor molecules. And this is a microtubule, and it's made out of proteins that are in kind of a curlicue shape and form a tube. And you can see the thing is moving along the tube. And I got some good video showing this. So here's the microtubule up here, and here's the vesicle here, and this is the motor molecule that carries the vesicle along.
Motor proteins cause movements of vesicles, organelles, and the cytoskeleton. Kinesin is a motor protein that moves vesicles and organelles toward the plus ends of microtubules.
Sarah, you're missing this.
Is kinesin the only kind of motor molecule?
There's a few different kinds. Isn't that cool? I love to play with that.
What's the difference between motor molecules?
That's a good question. I don't know that much about motor molecules.
Okay.
There's different types and they cause movement in different ways. Some probably move faster than others, slower than others, take more energy, take less energy. That's some cell biology questions that we just don't get into in this class. This is an actual phase contrast microscope picture of this stuff moving.
Motor proteins too tiny to see are carrying vesicles, the small spheres, along microtubules, the tracks.
I'm just kidding.
So this is this is up close inside a cell. Look at all these vesicles moving around. This is happening inside every one of your cells right now. You think you're just sitting there not doing anything, but look at all the activity that's going on in all of your cells. And you have 80 trillion cells in your body.
Can you look at a single cell?
Yeah, we're going to do that.
But,
You can scrape a cheek cell off and put it on a microscope.
but like, what does a single cell do? Like, if it's just sitting there by itself.
Nothing, it just sits there. Cells don't really, well, except maybe a white blood cell can crawl around and look for something. But cells usually act along with other cells to have a function.
So you said the filaments are also like highways, whatever.
Yeah, filaments are like highways too. They're just different. Shapes and sizes. The filaments are thinner. The tubules are wider.
They all do the same thing. They're just different.
Yeah, they have some different functions that we won't really get into the specific function of each one.
The outer wall of the cell allows it to take in the raw materials it needs to stay alive. Cells trap these materials from the outside and package them into tiny cargo bubbles called vesicles.
So that's a vesicle being taken into a cell.
The bubble hitches a ride on a motor no bigger than a molecule, which latches on to one of the miniature monorail tracks that form the cell's transport network.
That's the microtubule.
Usually, the bubbles reach their destinations within seconds. But in the biggest cells, which stretch from the spine to the toe, the journey can take 4 days. Each bubble carries a code, a chemical address label that guides it to a particular location. When it reaches its target, perhaps a lysosome, one of the cell's many recycling plants, it hops off the track and empties its cargo. The job of the recycling plant is to break down the delivered raw materials into smaller building blocks, which the cell uses to grow.
That's a big lysosome. It's breaking down whatever is in that.
That's so cool.
So this is all happening inside the cell.
Uh-huh.
How does the motor molecule move? Like, what is it? Does it like twist or something?
Yeah, it does. It's kind of got like a spring-loaded thing that that when it trips, it goes forward like this, and goes back, and trips again, and as it moves, it pulls itself along. It has to be powered. It's a physical mechanism. So here it shows some of the various shapes of the cytoskeleton. Here, these thin filaments are called actin filaments. It shows the stem of a plant here called Cara is really strong because it's got a lot of these actin filaments. And actin, A-C-T-I-N, actin. And they show here a little video of how the actin is put together. This is the structure of an actin filament.
The machinery of skeletal muscle includes thin and thick filaments. The core of a thin filament is an actin filament, a double helix of globular actin molecules. Each globule includes a site where another protein, the myosin of a thick filament, can bind. A long third protein, tropomyosin, lies blocking the myosin binding sites. A fourth protein, troponin, can move tropomyosin and unblock the myosin binding sites.
Now, you don't need to worry about all those words, but you see each little circle there, each little green circle or blue circle or tan circle, each one of those is a protein. Y'all know what a protein is?
Chain of amino acids.
A chain of amino acids all folded up. Here we go. Here's a chain of amino acids all folded up. That's that one green thing.
Does it really make a circle, or is that just...
Yeah, well, it's not really a circle. That's
So
just a representation. It probably has some sort of globular shape. But isn't that pretty? And these long purple cables are longer, are proteins that are stretched out a bit. Really interesting the way these cytoskeleton are put together. Here's some actin being put together.
Globular molecules of G-actin assemble to form a microfilament of F-actin. G-actin is not drawn actively to the growing microfilament, but bumps into it at random.
So the proteins are all assembled in the right order. There are enzymes that take care of this. this shows that this is an enzyme right here, and this is a network of actin in the cell. And this is an enzyme that breaks it down. Watch how it does it.
Here's part of the cytoskeleton. The actin microfilaments link to one another by cross-linking proteins. A molecule of gelsolin, an actin-binding protein, will bind a microfilament. Gelsolin cuts the microfilament, caps one of the cut ends, preventing further growth, and lets the rest of the molecule degrade.
So the cell can tear up and break down its own cytoskeleton with these enzymes.
Why would it do that?
If it wants to change its shape or grow or multiply, sometimes you got to tear things down. And I'll show you some times when the cell is multiplying where it has to tear down its framework. Yes.
What was that you just showed us?
That was an actin. Actin filament being torn apart. Yeah. Here's a microtubule being made. Here's a microtubule. Again, it's made of proteins.
A microtubule grows by adding tubulin units that randomly bump the growing end. We're showing only those dimers that join the microtubule. Microtubules shorten by losing tubulin. Actually, microtubules usually grow and shorten at just one end.
Do we ever know about like centrioles?
Yes, we're going to learn about centrioles in chapter 9. I'll tell you what they are here. Let's see what this is. A YouTube video. Oh, okay. This is the one I was showing you yesterday. This is, all these little videos I'm showing you it doesn't really look like this. And this is a group from Harvard University that made a video showing a lot more of what it would really look like inside a cell. And it's very, very cool. And it's put to music. I just like it. Everybody likes this. Those are little white blood cells crawling around the bloodstream. It's the cell membrane on the top. That's the network. Microfilament network. Filament being put together. Take it apart. Tubule being put together. And take it apart. That's one of the things hauling a vesicle along. That's bits of RNA leaving the nucleus, going to a ribosome and being made into a protein. There's the protein coming out. That's a mitochondrion. That's the Golgi body.
Goes by
a couple cells. How cool is that? They made some more videos, and I need to try and find them. But that's probably more like what it actually looks like if you were inside the cell. We didn't have anything like that when I was a kid. We just had to imagine. The last organelle is the centrioles. Right here, see these centrioles? They're involved in cell reproduction. And if you look at the cell, we go all the way back here. I know there's a quicker way to do this. There we go. You can see, here's the cell. Right here, there are a couple of organelles called centrioles. And the centrioles are active in cell division. What they do, when the cell is going to divide itself in half, these centrioles move to opposite sides of the cell and start shooting fibers out of them called spindle fibers. And the spindle fibers help the cell separate itself and divide in two. Cells, when they get big enough, will divide in two. And so these things are active in cell division. Now, we call the whole area here the centrosome. The centrosome is the area that has microtubules in it. I'm sorry, that has centrioles in it. These two little discs here are called centrioles, and the whole area where they exist is the centrosome. And so it shows those up close. Go back to where we were. Oh, there they are. There they are up close. They're made of microtubules. And scientists aren't really sure how they do their thing or what's the deal with them. Because plant cells don't have centrioles. Only animal cells have them. And plant cells can still divide. And plant cells still shoot out these fibers. But for some reason, you don't find the centrioles in the plant cells. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a little confused at like the process and the fibers and all that. So like when a cell wants to divide, it sends a message to that cell.
These little centrioles right here will actually physically move to opposite sides of the cell, and then shoot out little fibers that helps the cell divide.
Okay, so plants don't.
We don't learn. That's all of chapter 9 is about that.
So scientists don't know how plants do it.
Yeah, plant cells don't have the centrioles. But they still have the fibers that come shooting out of the centrioles.
Does everyone else have centrioles except plants? Or is it just animals?
Just animals have centrioles. Plants don't.
So they don't know where the fibers come from?
In plants, they don't. And in animals, they thought they came from these. It looks like they come from these, but plants don't have those. So it's still kind of a mystery that one day they'll figure out. And then finally, the last organelle that we talk about in this chapter is the flagellum. Have you ever seen a sperm cell swimming around under a microscope? It's got a big tail, a flagellum, that flaps. And the flagellum is made of these microtubules. These little tubes all arranged in this circular arrangement. When I was in school, we had to memorize it was called a 9+2 arrangement. There are 9 double sets of tubules. Let's see if that's right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Plus 2 in the middle. That's called a 9+2 arrangement. Here you can see it right here. And flagella had this 9+2 arrangement. And then this is a 9+0 arrangement. That's called the basal body, that sits down underneath the flagellum. The flagellum is right here, and the basal body sits right below it. It's like a base that the flagellum is attached to. I don't know why they made us memorize it. It was 9 plus 2 and 9 plus 0. Who cares? As you can see how these organisms working with their flagella.
A third phylum of protists are the flagellates.
See the little
These
tail? It's hard to
organisms
see.
move by wiggling long, whip-like threads called flagella. The flagellate seen here, called a euglena, is an interesting organism because it possesses both animal and plant-like characteristics. Like a plant, the euglena has green-colored chloroplasts that are used to make food by photosynthesis. However, under conditions of darkness, a euglena behaves more like an animal by hunting for and ingesting food. Other features of the euglena that are more animal than plant-like are its ability to move freely about and to sense light with its large red eye spot.
You can hardly see the flagella there.
Well, what is a euglena?
What's that?
What is a euglena? Is it a
It's a
plant?
protist.
So what does it actually do though? Like, I know how it moves.
It swims around in the ocean and tries to survive.
In the ocean.
Or in a lake. Have you ever seen a lake that looks green?
Yeah.
It's probably filled with millions of euglenas, and that's why it makes it look green.
No, like the flagellum.
Oh, the flagella just allows something to move. It's like a propeller
Okay.
that moves something along.
Locomotion, that is the ability to move about, is very highly developed in protists.
Can we just see
Protists
this?
basically use any one of 3 different cell structures for locomotion. Perhaps the most common of these are the wiggling hair-like structures called cilia, seen here. Organisms possessing cilia are classified into the protist phylum known as the ciliates. Besides being used for locomotion, many ciliates also use cilia to sweep food into mouth-like openings in their cells.
Cilia are like little tiny flagella. They're like little hairs that help organisms move around.
Do you have to know that?
I don't know why I have that video there. Does it talk about them in the book?
Yeah. Yeah.
Talks about cilia, yeah. Then you have to.
So they're just like smaller flagella?
Smaller. They're little like little hairs. The flagella are like long whip-like tails.
So they're just like a body of hairs?
Yeah, a bunch of hairs, cilia, that help move organisms around. So I think we covered everything.
Test over chapter 4 now.
No, 4, 5, and 6. Wait, why are y'all getting up? What's going on? There's mayhem. So, can you tell me, just from what you've learned so far, do you know what the difference is between animal cells and plant cells? There's 5 major differences. Okay?
No.
Lee?
Animal cells have cell walls.
Nope. Close.
Oh my bad, plant cells.
Plant cells have cell walls. That's one difference.
Plant cells and chloroplast.
Plant cells has chloroplast. That's 2 differences.
Vacuole.
The vacuole. Plant cells have a vacuole. That's difference number 3. Isaac?
Chloroplast.
Plant cells have chloroplasts.
Sorry, send
Did we say that?
Yeah.
So cell walls,
Who is
chloroplasts, and vacuoles plant cells have. Is there anything else that's different?
Centrioles.
Animal cells have centrioles and plant cells don't. And there's one more.
Plant cells don't have lysosomes.
Plant cells don't have lysosomes and animal cells do. Those are the 5 major differences.
Cool.
Y'all got them all.
Yep, and we didn't even look.
Very nice.
Wait, can you go say that?
Animal cells have centrioles and lysosomes. And plant cells don't. Plant cells have cell walls. What's the cell wall made of? Do you remember?
Cellulose.
Cellulose. It's that carbohydrate, that polysaccharide that we studied in chapter 3. Cellulose. So they have a cellulose cell wall, they have chloroplasts for making food, and they have this big vacuole in the middle. Jordan, you getting all this? I know the camera's getting it, but are you getting it? Okay.
What's that?
Anyone else? Have any questions about the cell? Yeah.
So are chloroplasts in animal cells too?
No. Chloroplasts only in plants. Because chloroplasts are for making your own food. Wouldn't it be great if we had chloroplasts? Then you could go out in the sun, and when you're laying out, you'd be getting food. You'd be like, tastes so good. And then the cloud comes over, and you go, oh man, I was eating. But we'd all be green. That might be a disadvantage. Unless you're like the Incredible Hulk. It was green. It's not a real thing, though. It's a comic book.
Vitamin D comes from Earth. Sunlight forms vitamin D, right?
Yeah, it does. It does. You do make a little vitamin D.
We do eat a little bit.
Yeah.
Same.
You're right. What other questions about cells? This is a lot of stuff in this chapter. It's historically one of the toughest chapters for kids. The toughest being this one, 7 and 8.
Genes.
Genes are impossible.
No, the one on the immune system, which is like 40.
What makes this so much tougher than all the others?
What's that?
What makes this so much tougher than all the others? Like,
7 and 8 have real long processes that are hard to understand. But once you got it, it's cake. Yeah.
Is this test on 4, 5, and 6?
This test is 4, 5, and 6.
What is the test?
Question?
Will we cover every chapter and every lesson, or?
We cover every chapter, but we don't do every chapter